There's a number of things that happen with newbie gains. It's a pretty cool thing. It's a quick adaptation when the body recognizes a new stimulus. But what we're starting to understand about newbie gains is that it's a little more complex than we thought. For example, there's some literature that found that newbie gains are actually the same whether someone is doing like traditional resistance training or a combination of mild resistance training, even with like some isometric holds. The point is that newbie gains come whether you are pushing it really hard or pushing it kind of easy. Like newbie gains are just newbie gains. But the thing is once the newbie gains stop, they stop pretty hard. And that's where the science is a little unclear. Like when do newbie gains for building muscle actually stop? Like what point do they really stop? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? Most of the literature seems to kind of land around 3 to 6 months. But the thing is that once you hit that end point, there's sort of a hard line. And then all of a sudden you have to either start pushing it harder. You're kind of in that intermediate category where you have to progressively overload. Now the gains slow down and you're not going to just build muscle just by going to the gym. You actually have to tax yourself. And that's why it kind of weeds people out, because you get newbie gains, and then those that went through the newbie gain phase pushing it pretty hard. Well, let's actually back up for a second. Let's say you have 2 people that just started working out. You have person A and person B. Person A worked out really hard right out the gate. Person B was kind of lackadaisical. Well, at the end of 3 months, both person A and person B had similar newbie gains. So person B is looking at person A being like, I work really hard. Person A is looking at person B like, I saw you in the gym. You weren't working that hard. Why did we get the same amount of gains? Now, 6 months later, person A has continued to excel and person B has not. Now, I'm not saying you're a person A or a person B. It's just a nice way to illustrate it. So I bring this to mind because there is a relatively new study that really looked at things nicely in how we can get more out of our newbie gains. The study was published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research, and it was looking at something called the Stretch-Mediated Hypertrophy response, which is something that a number of exercise physiologists talk about. It's where you're inducing muscle growth by working in a stretched position or just stretching in general. Because we have these cool things on our muscles that are like these, almost like these anchors. They're called integrins. They're these anchors that are in our muscle, and they notice when the muscle is kind of like getting stretched or mechanically tearing a little bit, right? So that triggers muscle growth. Well, this study had some really interesting results. So what this study did is it took novice lifters, like that had still kind of in the newbie gain category, but towards the end of it, and they had them do a standard resistance training workout. Okay, so standard couple days a week resistance training. Another group did the same resistance training. So they did the same resistance training, except what they did is they also added 2 times per week of 30 minutes of just static stretching. So just stretching for 30 minutes. So doing the kind of painful stretching that we don't really want to do, right? What they found with this was really wild. They measured their leg press strength, they measured their leg extension strength, and they measured their leg curl, like a hamstring curl strength. Okay, the group that did not do the stretching had decent increases. They had a 12% increase in their leg press. They had a 14% increase in their leg extension. Like nice increases just by working out. But the group that did the stretching too, no other resistance training, just stretching, 31% increase in strength on their leg press. That is insanely wild. 27% increase on their leg extension. So 31% compared to 12% increase in leg press. 27% in leg extension compared to 14% in leg extension. With strength generally comes mass. So what they're finding with this is that by just adding some stretching in, you get this huge benefit. But then there's a couple other interesting ways that you can break through these plateaus, right? Now, the first one is recognizing that the more you train and the more advanced you get, the more protein you need. Plain and simple, okay? And you want to eat protein that is rich in leucine, but you also want to eat protein that is high on what is called the DIASS score. This is your ileal digestibility. What is actually absorbed through the intestines, not just high in leucine. Like you could eat leucine until your face is blue, but if it's not absorbing, it's not going to do you any good for muscle protein synthesis. Eat some beef. Good old-fashioned ground beef is my favorite. I put a link down below to get some of the best ground beef that you would probably ever have. It's the kind of ground beef that when you cook it, it gets that little bit of crispiness to it, and the fat is just a good quality fat. It's not over the top. It is the best. It's like so good for making tacos, so good for making burgers, but I just eat ground beef like crazy. It is my go-to. I have small kids, so I don't have time to cook a lot of fancy stuff. I just cook ground beef and enjoy it. So that link is for ButcherBox. So you can get ground beef, you can get ground bison, lots of different cuts of steaks. And if you click that link, it actually shows my favorite cuts, my preferred types of meat from ButcherBox. It gets delivered to your doorstep. It's grass-fed, grass-finished. It's the highest quality stuff, in my opinion, that you can really find. It's much better than the grocery store in many cases, but it gets delivered to your doorstep. And the bottom line is, it tastes the best. So if you're trying to eat more protein, you want it to taste good. So that link down below for ButcherBox, I'm telling you, you will not regret it. It is so darn good, and it's a lot more affordable than most of the beef at the grocery store these days. So the next thing that you can do to kind of break through these plateaus, there was a study that was published in the European Journal of Sports Science. Okay, it looked at full range of motion exercises, like in this case, leg extension, partial initial range of motion, so at the beginning sort of stretch, and then end range of motion. What they found is that there was up to a 70% increase in the strength that came when people were doing more of an initial stretch phase partial movement. So it means if you get close to failure, but you can't do a complete rep, pumping out the partials can actually increase not just strength, but muscle growth significantly. So if you're at this point where you're trying to get more of your newbie gains, and you're tapped out on it, do these things first. Add the stretching in, but then also add these partials in. This is a great way because what we're finding is that it's less about just training to complete failure. It's less about training with really heavy loads. Although that matters, total load matters, it's more about your proximity to failure. And there are so many other metabolic pieces that go into training to failure. Hydrogen ions building up, inorganic phosphate, lactate, dissociated to lactic acid, how fast you... Point is it's not just about train to failure, break down muscle. That's caveman stuff. We have a whole other metabolic machinery that's at play here. So with that metabolic machinery, how do we get ourselves to failure? Closer to failure without jeopardizing our joints, without jeopardizing a muscle tear. Partial reps are a great way to do that. So the stretching thing that I talked about, that's a great way to sort of almost proprioceptively make the muscle want to grow more by mechanically tearing it by stretching it in a controlled way. Partial reps get us to that metabolic state where we get to failure and even beyond. Because you can go to full range of motion failure, but not be at necessarily full failure for a partial range. So you're inducing more of that metabolic stimulus, increasing levels of inorganic phosphate that thereby trigger the recruitment of more muscle fibers that then go to failure, that then allow more growth. It's a phenomenal thing and allows us to break through plateaus, whether we are newbies or we are advanced. And again, then your protein demand goes up. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we're getting as much protein as we can in. And this newer research, which I've talked about in many videos, suggests that even if you just get a large bolus of protein in one sitting, that's fine. Just do what you can do to get it in. And I referenced Dr. Mike Ormsby's work. Another thing that you can do, simply having protein at night before bed. Simple protein, no carbs, no fat, just a whey protein shake mixed with water can increase muscle protein synthesis, increase your muscle growth without impeding your sleep or fat oxidation. These are the things that are going to put you a cut above the other newbies, and they're going to allow you to continue. So while person B that I talked about earlier is having a hard time really excelling, if person B was to just say, I'm going to do a few more partial reps, they might be able to get themselves closer to failure without the mental fatigue or without the breakdown of the body quite so much. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. See you tomorrow.